Silent Hill, one of the staple survivor horror games of the PS1 generation. A codifier of the genre along with Resident Evil. A critically acclaimed series, each game broken down, dissected and analyzed to explore its themes and meanings by dozens of YouTubers before me. Its dark themes and characters fascinating me to no end. And I've never played a single game in the series.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Okay, look, I was 8 years old when this game was released. I didn't own a PS1 until like a year later. I grew up poor. Buying new games was a luxury reserved for birthdays and Christmas. And my local Blockbuster didn't have the best selection of games. Or if they did, my baby brain was distracted by the bright colors of games like Banjo-Kazooie or Glover. So Silent Hill wasn't something that I stumbled across when it was first released. And as I grew older and could pay for my own games like a big boy, the series entered its dark age with lackluster release after lackluster release, before Konami just killed the series along with every other franchise they own. So the series was just something that passed me by, even if I did enjoy survival horror. That said, I do have a general good understanding about Silent Hill and what it's all about. Pretty much every one of my favorite, long-form video essayists has covered one or all of the games in the series. You'd think that would spoil and ruin the experience for me, but it's the exact opposite. It created this intrigue and drive to go and experience the series for myself. With all the older games I've revisited on this channel, I thought, hell, why not play something I never got the chance to? Also, conveniently, it just happens to fit with the Spooky Month theme. So join me as I fumble through playing the first game in the series, misunderstanding its themes and getting stuck on its puzzles. Feel free to roast me for anything stupid I say in the comments. The game begins with our protagonist, Harry Mason, on a nice leisurely drive with his daughter Cheryl. They don't get to enjoy their father-daughter bonding time for long, as Harry's distracted when seemingly another little girl runs across the road, causing him to lose control of his car and crash, waking up to find Cheryl missing. He wanders around for a bit trying to find her, finding himself in the foggy ghost town of Silent Hill. I love the ominous atmosphere of this place. The fog surrounding you so dense that you can barely see a few feet around you. Combined with the falling snow and lack of any sounds outside of your footsteps, it really creates a tense setting. Like anything can just hop out of the fog to attack. Eventually Harry spots Cheryl, but she takes off into the fog and deeper into the town, disappearing down an alley. Yikes, what is that? A dog? Or what's left of one, maybe? Better save my little girl pronto. Running down the alley, the camera starts to move and shift to an overhead perspective. And I love how it pulls that off. Instead of a forced camera angle like you'd see in Resident Evil, it actually gradually and slowly moves the camera instead. It can feel disorienting and adds to the creep factor, and the wrongness of this town. The fog and snow are soon replaced with rain and darkness, the faint sounds of sirens now blaring in the background. Using a match to see, Harry continues his search for Cheryl, passing by an ominous wheelchair and a hospital gurney with a bloody sheet on it. The music steps up in intensity here, which I can only describe as the sound of heavy machinery now mixed in with the sirens. The way the camera focuses and follows Harry gives this feeling that something or someone is watching him, following him as he descends deeper into the alley. Soon, more and more blood starts to appear on the floor and fence, finally resulting in a dead end. Harry face to face with a corpse that's strung up on barbed wire.
What is this? What's going on here?
He doesn't get much time to contemplate what the hell he's staring at, as these tiny little creatures appear out of nowhere to attack him. Don't know what their deal is. Some sort of metaphor for child abuse, perhaps? With nothing to fight back, I huff it as fast as I can. But these little guys get the best of me and kill me. Well, that's kind of embarrassing. Guess I should turn in my gamer card after dying that quick. Oh, I was supposed to die. Yeah, I totally knew that. Harry wakes up in a cafe, wondering if everything he just went through was just a dream, before meeting this tall drink of water, Sybil Bennett. Presumably, she found him and brought him back to the cafe. She's a police officer from the town over, and like Harry, is confused about what the hell is going on in town and where everyone is. Harry asks her about Cheryl, but unfortunately, she hasn't seen her. Sybil plans to leave town to go get help, while Harry returns to his mission of searching for his daughter. But since he got his ass kicked by those little stabby gremlins, Sybil gives him a gun and some tips on proper gun safety.
Now listen to me. Before you pull the trigger, know who you're shooting. And don't do it unless you have to. And don't go blasting me by mistake.
Once she leaves, I explore the diner and get properly equipped, grabbing a flashlight to help in the darkness, some health drinks, a handy-dandy map, a stabby-stabby knife, and a convenient notepad nearby where I can save my progress. Thankfully, unlike Resident Evil, I don't need ink ribbons or some other limited resource in order to save. As I'm about to leave the cafe, the portable radio nearby starts blazing like crazy.
What's that? Huh, radio. What's going on with that radio?
Just before some bat-like creature comes bursting in. It's an unskippable fight, and serves to introduce the game's combat. You have to hold down R2 to draw your weapon, and then X to attack. When your weapon is drawn, it'll auto-lock onto the nearest enemy for you to attack. You'll make use of a variety of melee weapons and guns throughout the game. Melee weapons are infinite use, their damage, reach, and attack speed varying between them. Best used on slower moving enemies or when in one-on-one combat. Guns, meanwhile, deal more damage but need ammo. Best used to keep your distance between enemies or shooting flying enemies. Fun fact, trying to stab something that is flying is really stupid. I don't have much to say about the combat. It certainly gets the job done and doesn't feel clunky. Though combat isn't the obvious focus or solution to all problems, as the game's bigger and wide open level design encourages avoiding most enemies. After busting a cap in the monster's ass, I now get the radio, which functions as a warning system anytime monsters are near. Something my dumb brain didn't put together until I was almost done with the game, as I didn't read its description, and assumed the sound it was making was part of the background music. Now it's time to head back to the alley and try to pick up the trail on Cheryl. I really like the way the game uses its map, as it looks like what you'd expect a real town map to look like. Listing off the name of streets, important locations, and the way it marks off objectives makes it look like Harry himself is actually drawing on the map. The new goal is to return to the alley from before and pick up the trail on Cheryl. I really like the design of the town of Silent Hill, as it really looks like what a small town in America would look like. The street signs and crosswalks work to visually help you figure out where you're going without having to constantly rely on your map. Not that it didn't stop me from pulling it up every few minutes during my playthrough. Running past more bat things, and now inside-out dogs, a metaphor for the animal that lives inside us all perhaps, I reach the alleyway, which is now blocked off, but I find a note reading "to school," marking off our next location. Before leaving, I pick up a steel pipe, a much better melee weapon than the dinky knife from before. Harry also finds the sketchbook that he gave Cheryl for her birthday. Guess it has no sentimental value for him since he just leaves it in the alley. Harsh, Harry. That might be the only keepsake you have if you don't find her in time. Well, looks like we're off to school.
Oh, back to school, to prove to Dad that I'm not a fool. I got my lunch packed up, my boots tied tight. I hope I don't get in a fight. Oh, back to school, back to school, back to school.
Unfortunately, the streets leading to the school are both destroyed, but I do find a hint on where to go next, with some notes on the ground pointing to a doghouse on Levin Street. Once there, I find a key inside the doghouse that will let me into the residence nearby. The inside of the house is safe, with some ammo and health pickups, along with a notepad to save. Beside the locked back door is a map marking off 3 locations for something called the Keys for Eclipse. Hopefully it's not that type of eclipse. The keys are named after and engraved with pictures of Dorothy's friends from The Wizard of Oz. Where you find the keys are also references to the story, specifically the book version. The Scarecrow's key is found after crossing a fallen tree, referring to a scene in the book where he suggests they cut down a tree to cross a chasm. The Woodman's key is found next to a decapitated dog head, referencing how he decapitated a pack of wolves the Wicked Witch sent to attack them. And the Lion's key is found near a bottomless pit, referring to a scene in the book where the lion had to jump over a chasm with his friends on his back. Harry is the obvious Dorothy in this situation, a stranger in an unknown world just trying to go home. And I guess Cheryl is Toto, or maybe that decapitated dog head is supposed to be. Who knows? Well, let's unlock this door already and follow that yellow brick road back home. Uh-oh, it is that type of eclipse. Run, Harry! You don't want to end up like the Band of Hawk. It might be easy to assume that things going dark means a change in time of day, but it actually signals Harry being pulled into the Otherworld. The same thing happened before when he went down the alley and got stabbed by those little goblin children. At first, the change is subtle, as on my way to the school, things haven't changed much outside of being dark. But that darkness combined with the creepy music causes my anxiety to go through the roof. It's harder to see enemies coming, and despite only running into the same bat and dog things from before, I can't help but dread that something worse is waiting for me now. The Otherworld's influence on Silent Hill, and by extension Harry, will grow stronger throughout this next part. Eventually, I arrive at the school and pick up a map to figure out my way around here. The school is huge and made up of several floors, which can make it confusing to navigate, especially as certain doors are locked on one side. So you have to take the long way around in order to proceed to some rooms. Add in the continuous darkness and how similar some parts of the school look, and it's easy to get turned around if you're not constantly looking at the map. First stop is the infirmary for some healing items and to save again. Wandering around the school and ending up in the courtyard, I ran into those stabby boys from before. It's payback time. I'm not quite sure where to go at first, but pieced together I need to get into this clock tower. There's also some notes in the reception area of the school that hints on how to proceed and where to go next. I have to find Golden Sun and Silver Moon medallions in order to unlock the doors to the tower. The Golden Sun medallion is in the chemistry lab on the 2nd floor, in the palm of an old man's hand statue. Since I can't smash it for some reason, instead I need to dissolve the hand with a bottle of acid, found in the lab equipment room in order to get the medallion. The Silver Moon medallion is located in the music room. This time I need to solve a piano puzzle in order to get it. A poem on the wall nearby hints at what keys to play and in what order. There are 12 keys you can play on the piano, with 5 of the keys being muted. The poem is titled The Birds Without a Voice, hinting that you need to play the muted keys. Each verse in the poem refers to a different bird, the color of the bird hinting at the key you need to play. Reading each verse will tell you the rough location of each key in relation to each other. And man, I don't know if I'm just stupid, but this was a real head scratcher. I really couldn't piece together what to play until I just gave up and looked it up. But I'll give credit where credit is due, as it feels like, an actual puzzle. Having to put your brain to work to figure out how to solve the problem, as opposed to puzzles in modern games, where the puzzle is just to find a key item and bring it back to where it belongs. With both medallions in hand, I place them at the base of the clock tower. But that doesn't unlock the door. I have to head downstairs into the boiler room and turn on the machine down here, which turns on the mechanism that unlocks the clock tower, apparently awakening something else. Entering and passing through a passage beneath the clock tower, I climb up a ladder to take me to the same clock tower again? Wait a tick, what's going on here? It may look the same, but right away Harry spots a demonic symbol on the ground that wasn't there before. And re-entering the school? Yep, that's certainly different. Harry's been completely sucked into the Otherworld now, as the school has gone from a spooky house of learning to something out of a Freddy Krueger nightmare, with metal grates on the floor, rusted and decrepit walls, along with blood and corpses everywhere. Also more of those stabby gremlins infesting the halls, along with these big creepy crawlies. Harry's trapped in the school now, and can't return to the normal foggy Silent Hill till he escapes the Otherworld's influence. This involves finding his way back down to the boiler room and defeating the thing he awakened when turning on the boiler initially. I won't go through every little step to get there, but the cliff notes of it is, I have to find various items and keys to unlock the doors around the school, slowly making it to the other side of the building, and finally to the stairwell leading to the basement. Picking up a shotgun from the boys' bathroom on the way. Inside the transformed boiler room, we got our first boss fight, against this giant lizard-like monster. A book found before this room tells the fairy tale about a monster kinda like this, which probably explains why it's here in the first place. The book also hints on how to beat it, as you can only kill it by shooting it when its mouth is open. It's an insanely easy fight, as a few shotgun blasts ends the fight in seconds. Monster defeated, things start shifting back to the regular Silent Hill, but we see a brief glimpse of a mysterious girl who disappears after returning to the normal boiler room. Spooky. I wonder what her deal is. Harry can now hear church bells ringing in the distance, and finds a key belonging to a K. Gordon, pointing towards the next place to go after leaving the school. No clue what happened to K. Gordon, but it may not have been a pleasant end for them, if this bloodstain on their garage is anything to go by. This place is another safe house, with some ammo and another save spot. Leaving through the other side of the house, I can bypass the destroyed streets in order to reach the church. Arriving, Harry is greeted by an old woman who was ringing the bells to bring him to her. She knows that Harry is seeking his daughter, but doesn't really help, speaking cryptically and telling him to head to the hospital. She also gives him this weird Millennium Puzzle looking thing called the Flaros, that in her words will break through the walls of darkness and counteract the Otherworld. So presumably it'll be useful anytime things go dark, and allow me to tap into the heart of the cards. The old woman disappears afterwards and leaves Harry a key to the drawbridge that will let him get to the hospital. She certainly was weird, but clearly a nice old lady with no hidden agenda whatsoever. At the drawbridge, I find a map of the shopping district before dropping the bridge and crossing over. The shopping area is just as foggy and abandoned as the old side of Silent Hill, with not a soul to be seen. But now a new enemy is introduced, these strange jumpy boys, who look like the evolved form of the stabby gremlins from before. Before heading to the hospital, I hit up the police station first, gathering up more supplies and finding some interesting info on the blackboard. Looks like the town might have some kind of drug trafficking problem going on. The blackboard going over how the product is only distributed in certain parts of Silent Hill, and that the drug is made from a local plant, possibly manufactured here and with the dealer being somewhere in town. Man, and I thought the monsters in Nightmare World was bad enough. I also find a memo detailing the mysterious death of a police officer, which the coroner writes off as natural causes and totally not murder, even though the police officer was seemingly healthy before his death. I smell a mystery. Well, another mystery. As I arrive at the hospital, I hear a gunshot, and once inside the building, I run into a man who just killed a monster. He's not very friendly, as he immediately shoots at Harry, and somehow manages to miss despite being right in front of him. Maybe he has a low accuracy stat. After Harry de-escalates the situation, the man introduces himself as Dr. Michael Kaufman. He works at the hospital and apparently slept through whatever apocalypse hit Silent Hill, as he has no clue what's happening. They discuss the existence of the strange monsters in town, and it's not until now that I realize the snow outside also isn't natural, as according to Kaufman, it shouldn't be snowing at all this time of year. During their conversation, Harry opens up and we learn a little more about him, as apparently Cheryl is all he has left, as his wife passed away several years ago. After Kaufman leaves, I start exploring the hospital, finding maps for the building along with a key for the basement. There doesn't seem to be anyone here, or even monsters for that matter. Maybe Kaufman killed them all before I got here. There isn't anything of note at the moment, but there is a suspicious red liquid spilled in the hospital director's office. Wonder what that's all about. Someone should really clean that up. Entering the basement, I do a little exterminating by killing these giant cockroaches, and then turn on the hospital's generator. I can board the hospital's elevator now, but don't get far as the second and third floor hallways are locked off. Returning to the elevator, there's now a button for the 4th floor that wasn't there before. Uh-oh. Number 4? That's an evil bad number. As the elevator takes me to the new floor, we get a brief cutscene of the strange girl from the school entering an antique shop. No doubt the next place to head after I get out of this hospital. Arriving on the 4th floor, and yep, back in the Otherworld again. I wonder what horrors beyond comprehension I'll run into this time. Wait, what is that? Stay away, creature. I'll shoot. Oh, it's a doctor. With some kind of parasite growing out of his back. Huh. Was kinda expecting something a little more intimidating. Oh well. And wait, are these nurses? Aren't they supposed to be sexy monster nurses? Why do they look like unsexy hunchbacks? Did the internet lie to me? I just wanted some sexy monster nurses to stare at, and to put me at ease in this nightmare hospital. Coming to terms with my disappointment at the lack of sexy nurses, I pick up the hammer in the generator room, and put it to good use on these old hags. The Otherworld version of the hospital is a bit confusing to navigate, as each floor looks virtually the same, so I'm constantly pulling up the map to reorientate myself and figure out what direction I'm heading in. Also, there isn't an obvious place I'm supposed to go while here, unless I missed some note or memo that vaguely mentioned it, which chances are I probably did. So I head up to the 3rd floor and start exploring. The music up here really brings back memories of the Guardians from Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Here, have a listen. Check in the men's room, I find an item called the Plate of the Turtle. No doubt necessary for some kind of puzzle. In the storage room, I find a blood pack, and in one of the other rooms, another plate. This time, the Plate of the Cat. Heading down to the 1st floor, I visit the director's office for a safety save, and also find the Plate of the Queen. Heading up to the 2nd floor, I dome another hunchback nurse and steal her Zippo. I then find some worms? Tentacles? Evil flesh noodles of some kind? Whatever the hell it is, it's blocking access to another plate, and is immune to any form of damage. That's where the blood pack comes in handy, as I can toss it to distract the creature and nab the Plate of the Hatter. If it wasn't obvious by now, the plates are a reference to Alice in Wonderland, each one named after a character from the book, though the Plate of the Turtle threw me for a loop, mainly as I'm more familiar with the Disney animated movie than I am the original book. A door in the nurses' center is where I put the plates to use, having to arrange them in the correct order to open the door, with 4 colored plates already set in the door. Like the music puzzle back at the school, there's a poem on the wall that hints at the correct order to put the plates in. It's again cryptic and needs a little bit of thinking power, as you have to figure out how the lines refer to the plates. For example, the first line, clouds flowing over a hill, refers to the white plate already in the door, because clouds are white. The next line, sky on a sunny day, refers to the Plate of the Turtle, which is blue like the sky. And the third line, tangerines are bitter, refers to the orange plate already in the door. So the Plate of the Turtle goes between the white and the orange plates. Like earlier, my smooth brain couldn't figure it out and I just looked it up. Man, this game is really making me feel dumb. I now have access to the other half of the hospital, and continue exploring in order to figure out how to escape. Searching the operating room, I find a key to the basement storeroom, along with a bottle of alcohol in the ICU. Taking the elevator down to the storeroom, I push a cabinet aside to reveal a secret door. On the other side is a hatch covered in vines, necessitating some impromptu weed whacking to remove, by soaking the vines in alcohol and then burning them away with the lighter. Entering a secret 2nd floor, I bop more of these Uggo nurses, find a suspicious videotape, and finally enter an exam room. While it looks as dingy and decrepit as the rest of the hospital, there's certainly something off about it, considering it's tucked away in a secret area. On the machine beside the bed is a photo of a girl named Alessa, who looks very similar to the ghost girl we encountered at the school. Things just keep getting stranger and stranger. Grabbing a key beside her photo, I head to the first floor to unlock the examination room and enter for a surprise.
Finally, someone else who's okay.
Who are you?
My name's Lisa Garland. What's yours?
Sexy nurse, my sexy nurse, you're here after all. Everything's going to be okay now, guys. This sight for sore eyes is Lisa Garland. Like Dr. Kaufman, she apparently slept through the apocalypse, hasn't seen anyone but Harry, and hasn't seen Cheryl either. She's also oblivious about the secret room down in the basement, but does let slip that the nursing staff was on strict orders to stay away from the storage room. Unlike Kaufman, who was weirdly calm about the monsters showing up in Silent Hill, Lisa is absolutely terrified, and runs into Harry's arms when she sees him. Also, something I should point out is that Lisa is the first and only person so far that's shown up in the Otherworld, other than Harry. Before we can ponder this, or if Lisa is even aware of this fact herself, Harry starts blacking out as sirens start ringing in his head. Everything goes dark before he wakes up back in the normal version of the hospital. Lisa is nowhere to be seen. Instead, the old lady from before has returned, introducing herself as Dahlia Gillespie. She's still as cryptic as ever, telling Harry he needs to head to the other church in town, and that the satanic symbol we saw at the school is called the Mark of Samael. Dahlia tells him to stop the mark from being completed, before leaving him a key to the antique shop and disappearing again. Call me crazy, but I think there's something up with that lady. No time to ponder it though, time to go antiquing. I should mention that the antique shop isn't marked on your map, but checking the payphones you'll find out its location. At the antique shop, there isn't much to be found outside of some old knickknacks. The mysterious girl is nowhere to be seen either. Like the basement storage room, there's a cabinet here that can be pushed aside to reveal a secret path. But before Harry can enter this creepy hole in the wall, Sybil shows up again.
Harry!
Sybil?
I'm glad you're okay.
Oh man, now Harry has to choose between the hot lady cop or the hot nurse. It's Brock with Officer Jenny and Nurse Joy all over again. She fills Harry in on what she's been up to. All the roads out of town are blocked, no cars are working, and radios and phones are still down. Sybil does mention that she did spot a little girl in the fog, but is unsure if it was Cheryl or not, seeing her head in the direction of the lake, though the road to the lake itself was destroyed. Instead, she just floated across the destroyed path somehow. Harry is rightfully concerned since this is the best information he's gotten about Cheryl, assuming it's actually her. He fills Sybil in on what he's been up to, asking her if she knows anything about Dahlia, and her weird cryptic words about darkness consuming the town. Sybil doesn't know anything about her, and brushes Dahlia off as a crazy lady on drugs, bringing up the drug trafficking that's happening in town, with the police having zero leads on who's running it. Maybe this is all some huge drug trip that Harry is having, and there aren't any spooky monsters at all. Harry decides to head into the spooky hole in the wall and insists he go alone, Sybil reluctantly agreeing but telling him to be careful. Before leaving, he tries asking Sybil if she's been to the Otherworld, but she has no idea what he's talking about, and treats him like he's crazy. Maybe Harry is on drugs. Exploring the spooky glory hole, we find an altar which may be the other church that Dahlia was referring to. Looks like this altar worships Magneto? The Juggernaut, maybe? Yeah, I can't quite make out what this picture is of. Before leaving, the altar lights up. Harry's sucked back into the Otherworld before Sybil can help. Lisa greets Harry as he wakes up, telling him he's been having a nightmare. During this scene, she'll fill us in on some backstory on Dahlia and the town of Silent Hill. According to her, Dahlia is well known around the town and went crazy after her child died in a fire. The town itself used to be very religious before the resort on the lake was built, the older folks worshipping a strange religion, one that was more like a cult, with references to black magic and the occult. The cult has seemingly been dormant for years now, but became active again when people who developed the town started dying in mysterious accidents. Before Harry can learn more, he blacks out again, this time waking up in the Otherworld version of the antique shop, which is much creepier than before, now with corpses strung up on the wall, another mark of Samael being found on the floor, and a suspicious couch for some reason. Harry continues questioning his sanity, wondering if this is all some nightmare he's having while laying in a hospital bed after the initial crash. Wouldn't that be an interesting twist? This whole game being a fabrication created by a dying man's brain, Sybil being the cop who found him after the crash, and Lisa the nurse currently taking care of him in the real world. Scratch that. The whole it was a dream ending is always so lame. Always feels like a cop-out. Since the resort is where Cheryl may have been heading according to Sybil, Harry heads back to the hospital to ask Lisa how to get there. Stepping out of the antique shop, the Otherworld's grip on Silent Hill is even stronger than before. The streets have all been replaced with grates floating over a void, certain parts of the town now completely inaccessible. Also, the monsters have been upgraded, which may not be too apparent due to the darkness, but for example, the dogs wandering around town look a little beefier, with a strange worm-like head now. Since I can't get to the hospital the normal way, I have to cut through the town's mall instead, entering through a hole in the shutter. Traveling through the mall, a set of screens turn on and begin flashing marks of Samael.
Daddy, help me. Where are you?
This is the first time we've seen Cheryl since the beginning of the game, and the first time she's even spoken a single line. After the scene, I ascend the escalator and loot the local jewelry store before a metal grate on the floor gives out and drops Harry into a sand pit. It's time for another boss battle, this time against a giant caterpillar. Not quite what I was expecting, but alright then. In a nearby window you can pick up the rifle and start pumping shots into this bugger. It's a very simple fight, if a little slow, as the worm will crawl in and out of the sand shooting balls of poison. But circling around, you can avoid its attacks and pop off several shots into the worm before it disappears. Once defeated, it runs away, busting open the exit door for Harry to leave through. Silent Hill has been further corrupted by the Otherworld as almost everything about the town has crumbled away now. Metal grates everywhere, industrial pipes lining the streets, the sounds of loud machinery echoing through the black void that used to be the buildings. Meeting Lisa at the hospital, she's starting to lose it being trapped in this room all alone. Harry presses her on how to get to the lake, and she suggests trying an underground tunnel located at the waterworks, back by the elementary school. Lisa is desperate to get Harry to stay with her, but he instead tries to get her to leave the room with him, but she says she feels bound to the room, like she's not supposed to leave. At a crossroads, Harry promises he'll rush back to get her after saving Cheryl. Leaving the hospital, the roads are blocked and the only way I can go is up to the post office roof. The hungry caterpillar from before has transformed into a moth, and is still a stupidly easy boss fight. The bug swatted, the foggy version of Silent Hill returns, and I can head to the waterworks and enter the sewers. It's a brief section, dark, damp, filled with giant bugs and these weird lizard guys. You know, just like any town's sewer system. Surfacing in the resort area, it's dark once again. Though this time I think it actually is nighttime now, as it's still snowing and the streets and buildings still look fairly normal. This new area has a few places to visit and explore, but I'm going to skip over it for now and talk about it towards the end. Heading south and in the direction to the amusement park, sirens start blaring and reality shifts to the Otherworld again. Continuing down to the docks, I eventually find an abandoned boat and am reunited with Sybil. She explains she found her way here following the same sewer path that Harry took. As they catch up, Dahlia shows up, speaking her usual crazy talk, as she continues to warn of the darkness and now of a demon disguised as a child. Though she makes it clear the demon and Cheryl are not the same person, and warns Harry he needs to stop the ritual and the demon in order to save his daughter. Dahlia points him to both the lighthouse and the amusement park, as the final two places for the Mark of Samael to be completed. Sybil offers to help, heading to the amusement park while Harry takes the lighthouse.
I'll check out the amusement park. You go to the lighthouse.
Sybil, thanks.
Aw, I'm really rooting for these two, and hope everything ends okay. At the lighthouse, Harry is too late, as the mark has been completed up here, and the girl we've seen all game disappears yet again. Disappointingly, there's no boss fight. I was hoping I'd fight a flying octopus or fish or something. Back at the boat, Sybil still hasn't returned. Man, hopefully she's okay. Better head to the amusement park and check in on her. It's another trip down the sewers. Well, a different set of sewers. And while traveling through, we get a brief cutscene of Sybil being attacked. Move those legs, Harry. We gotta save the sexy cop lady. Leaving the sewers, Harry arrives at the amusement park. Like everywhere else, it's been consumed and distorted by the Otherworld, becoming a confusing mess of rides and metal. Despite being a tiny area, this place can be confusing to navigate, as most directions lead to a dead end and the darkness makes it hard to figure out which direction to go. Eventually, I find my way onto the carousel and find Sybil, but something is seriously off with her. Her eyes are red and she immediately opens fire on Harry, clearly being possessed by something. It's a boss fight, and one with something resembling actual strategy and difficulty, as Sybil's gun packs a wallop, doing some serious damage and dropping Harry flat on his ass. You can either take pot shots and run away when she tries to fire back, or wait Sybil out long enough for her gun to run out of ammo, where now she has to come up close to just slap you around to do damage, making her easy pickings for your own gun. Also, sometimes she rides on one of these horses for some reason. Unfortunately, shooting her full of holes does not bring her back to her senses, and Sybil dies. Rest in peace, my sweet. If only there was some other way I could have helped you. Harry doesn't get much time to mourn Sybil, as the ghost girl appears yet again. He confronts her and begs her to give Cheryl back, but she just blasts him with the Force instead, trapping Harry in a force field. At that moment, the Millennium Puzzle activates and shoots the ghost girl with an ancient Egyptian laser beam, knocking her down and weakening her. Dahlia shows up gloating and reveals that the girl is Alessa, the same girl whose photo we saw back in the hospital. More bombshells get dropped as it turns out Dahlia is Alessa's mother, and that she's been using Harry this entire time. Things don't get fully explained as Dahlia disappears with her daughter into a blinding light. When Harry comes to, he's with Lisa again. In the time he's been gone, she worked up the courage to leave the room and to check out the basement. She found the secret exam room from earlier, but states nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, she senses she knows something about it, but can't figure out why. Harry tries to calm and reassure her, but she storms off upset. Before he can go off after her, he hears a loud humming noise, seemingly coming from the basement. Leaving the room, it doesn't lead to the Otherworld Hospital, but instead directly to an elevator. Taking it down into the basement, we're now in a new location called Nowhere, the place made up of all the areas we've visited before, and with some doors that are marked with symbols that can only be unlocked with the right key. Nowhere is the final area of the game, a somewhat confusing mess of similar hallways that loop back on each other. And with no map available, it can be tough to make it back to a door you need to unlock if you lose your way. Partway through the area, we're reunited with Lisa, but she's a mess. Terrified, she explains to Harry that she's figured out why she's still alive and everyone else was dead. Simply put, she actually did die and hadn't realized it yet. Lisa begins sobbing and begs Harry for help after this realization, unsure of what's happening to herself. Harry kind of callously pushes her away, and a pre-rendered cutscene shows Lisa start to bleed profusely. She starts shambling towards Harry, who runs and closes the door on her.
Lisa?
Forcing the door closed as the poor girl bangs on it over and over again, asking for his help. Eventually, the banging stops, and returning to the room, Lisa is gone, leaving behind only her diary that recounts her unwariness about taking care of a strange patient. One with severe wounds that won't heal, staying in a room that constantly attracts insects, despite the windows and doors being shut tight. Lisa eventually decides to quit, feeling sick afterwards and hallucinating blood and pus pouring out of a bathroom faucet. Craving drugs, her last entry reading, "Help me." At first I thought Lisa may have been infected with whatever infected Sybil, especially when she starts bleeding and Harry starts backing away terrified. But her being dead this entire time is a pretty good twist. One that kinda explains all the strange things about Lisa, like how she only ever appears in the Otherworld, or why she's unable to leave the hospital, like a spirit bound to one spot where they died. Though how she died and why her spirit remained are up in the air at the moment. It's certainly very tragic, especially with how Harry treats her as she breaks down after figuring out the truth. Like, I get that he had the same realization that she had at that moment, that she was dead or a ghost. And with everything he's experienced up to this point, a sobbing ghost woman drenched in blood probably put him over the edge. But you'd think he'd offer some kind of words of comfort. At the very least, you get the feeling he regrets his actions somewhat while barring the door. But it's still kind of a serious dick move on Harry's part. Much later during this section, as I'm collecting the latest group of key items needed to proceed, I find a TV where I can play that VHS I found in the hospital. The tape is a recording of Lisa having a breakdown over the patient she's taking care of, revealed to be a child with severe burns, who, despite their horrific injuries and agonizing pain, refuses to die. Even further on, Harry ends up in Alessa's examination room again, except this time he sees a memory of the past. Dahlia, Dr. Kaufman, along with some other doctors are surrounding a bed, with someone in it we can assume is Alessa. They're discussing a ritual they performed, with something being sheltered inside Alessa's womb. Not quite sure what that means exactly, but the implications are very, very disturbing. Whatever it is they're trying to accomplish, it can't be done, as Alessa has seemingly separated half of her soul. Dahlia suggests using a magic spell, one that will put Alessa in agonizing pain in order to force the other part of her soul to come back. Things are slowly starting to come together to form a picture of whatever the hell happened to this town. I eventually stumble into a child's room, most likely Alessa's, with a door that can only be unlocked with all the holy relics scattered around in nowhere. Once I gather them all up and open the door, I'm greeted by another memory of the past.
No, I don't want to.
Do what Mommy tells you now.
This time of Dahlia dragging Alessa, trying to get her to use her power for something, while her daughter desperately begs not to, only wanting to stay with her mother. Descending down the steps, Harry finds Dahlia, along with her daughter Alessa, and someone else in a wheelchair. This is where everything comes together and the plot is fully explained. First, that isn't Alessa sitting on the ground. That's actually Cheryl. The real Alessa is behind her in the wheelchair. It's hard to tell because of the graphics, but she looks like she's been burnt up pretty bad. Cheryl is the other half of Alessa's soul that she cast off years ago when her mother put her through the ritual. A ritual in order to birth the Order's god, the Order being the name of the cult I've mentioned throughout the game. Said ritual involved Dahlia burning her 7-year-old daughter alive. Her pain and suffering meant to feed the god inside her and eventually give birth to it. In agonizing pain, Alessa splits her soul in order to put a stop to her mother and the Order's plans. That half of her soul was left as a newborn on the road, eventually discovered by Harry and his wife, who adopted the baby and named her Cheryl. As seen in the memory back in the examination room, this was a setback but didn't completely foil the Order's plan. First, the god growing inside her refused to let Alessa die, and second, her mother cast a spell to torture her daughter constantly, with the goal of forcing her other half to return. Alessa would endure this suffering for years, hidden away in the basement, with Lisa being the nurse in charge of watching and caring for her. Eventually, it all became too much for Alessa, and she called Cheryl back to Silent Hill, using an astral projection of herself to cause the initial car crash. It's during this moment when Harry is knocked out that Alessa and Cheryl reunite, becoming the younger Alessa we've seen all game. However, Alessa didn't recombine her soul to fulfill her mother's plan, but to kill herself and end her suffering, which she may have been trying to do with the use of the symbols she was placing around the town. Oh, and those weren't the marks of Samael, but apparently something called the Seal of Metatron. Man, that is a lot to take in.
But wait! There's more!
The state Silent Hill is in and the Otherworld that's constantly overtaking it are being caused by Alessa. Her supernatural powers combined with the horrible pain she's in, and the nightmare her mother's spell has put her in, causes Alessa to warp reality around her. The monsters and strange versions of the normal town created by her trauma and memories. For example, the little stabby gremlins we saw in the alley and at school represent the kids who bullied her when she was young, as Alessa was labeled a witch and tormented for having supernatural powers. I'll be honest, I was confused at first with the monster designs and bosses, as I was under the impression they were supposed to be some realized form of Harry's demons and trauma. But since they didn't really fit together, I thought the idea of Silent Hill reflecting your psyche didn't start until the second game, and just assumed they were generic monsters for the sake of having them. It's not until we get to this point that it all clicked for me, that it wasn't supposed to be a reflection of Harry's damaged psyche, but of Alessa's. And right here, I need to hit pause on the game as we're about to step into the ending and final boss. The game has 4 different endings. Technically 5, but that last ending is a joke ending and only obtainable after beating the game. Which of the 4 endings you get are dependent on 2 factors during your playthrough. First, whether you completed an extended side mission when entering the resort area, and second, if you spared Sybil. Yep, turns out you didn't need to pump her full of holes during her boss fight. First, let's cover that side mission. After entering the resort, instead of heading straight for the docks, you can instead explore the area and head to Annie's bar. In here, you'll run into Dr. Kaufman again, who's in the middle of a wrestling match with a monster. After Harry saves him, the doctor thanks him and leaves, dropping a key and a receipt. Next, head to the Indian Runner, which is some kind of general store. Using the number written on the receipt, you can unlock the door and go inside, finding more supplies. But you'll also stumble upon a safe filled with drugs. Apparently the drug being trafficked in town is coming from this place, and it heavily implies that Kaufman is involved or running the entire operation. Before leaving, you can find the code to enter the motel rear door, and after exploring the place and stepping into the garage, Harry will stumble upon a vial of strange red liquid, similar to what was found at the hospital. Kaufman will then show up to berate him, taking the vial and leaving, completing the side mission. Now, saving Sybil is a little trickier, as the ingredients to get it done have to be completed during the hospital section. Remember that broken vial of red liquid in Kaufman's office? Well, it turns out you can actually scoop some of it up, using a plastic bottle found in the hospital's kitchen. Then, during the boss fight with Sybil, run up to her, select the bottle from your inventory, and throw the stuff at her. That will exorcise the parasite from her body, bringing her back to her senses. If you didn't do the side quest or save Sybil, you get the bad ending. If you didn't do the side quest but did save Sybil, you get the bad plus ending. Do the side quest but don't save Sybil, and you get the good ending. And finally, do the side quest and save Sybil, and you'll get the good plus ending. Which ending you get will determine what the final boss is and who ends up surviving. In the 2 bad endings, Dahlia's plan succeeds, Alessa's astral projection reuniting with her body, transforming her into a woman in white shrouded in light. The Incubator, as she's now known, immediately kills her mother and engages Harry in a boss fight. She'll sit stationary in the middle of the room, pelting Harry with lightning. Killing her, Cheryl's voice reaches out, saying goodbye to Harry and thanking him for stopping her. Harry will collapse distraught at killing his daughter, the flames in the room spreading as things go black. One last cutscene after the credits revealing a grisly fate, as Harry ended up dying in the initial crash after all. Everything that happened was apparently a nightmare he was having as he was dying. In the bad plus ending, after Harry falls to his feet in despair for killing Cheryl, Sybil will appear and snap him out of it, urging him that they should both escape. It's a more ambiguous ending as we have no idea if the two of them made it out or not, and it doesn't show Harry dead in his car. In the good endings, on the other hand, after Dahlia is done monologuing about how her evil plan has succeeded, she's immediately shot, with Kaufman appearing out of nowhere to put a stop to her plans once and for all. He pulls out that bottle of red liquid that was hidden in the motorcycle. It's called the Aglafatis, the liquid made of a special herb of the same name that can expel demons. Kaufman tosses it at Alessa, stopping her from becoming the incubator, but instead causing the god growing inside her to escape from her back in a weakened state. This flying horned demon is the Incubus, who immediately kills Dahlia after being prematurely born. It's the exact same fight as before, needing to dodge its lightning and fill it full of holes. When the Incubus dies, Alessa reappears, handing Harry a baby. Presumably this is Cheryl reborn, and as a real girl instead of being half of Alessa's soul again. As everything burns down around them, Alessa opens up a portal for Harry to escape through. Kaufman tries to make a run for it too, but out of nowhere Lisa returns, dragging the doctor to his doom. I was confused when it happened, but while going through the footage to write my script, I realized that Kaufman was the one feeding her drug habit, and is probably responsible for her death, either by directly killing her, or him supplying the drugs that caused her to overdose. I'm not quite sure on which exactly, as I don't think I saw anything that confirmed how Lisa died in the first place. Feel free to let me know in the comments if I missed it, or it's confirmed in the novel or one of the other games. And if you guys are curious, I got the good plus ending, mostly because I screwed up and spoiled the game for myself when using a guide for the puzzles. Lesson learned: never use a guide ever again. The good plus ending is the exact same thing, except Sybil shows up and escapes along with Harry and the reborn Cheryl. The two of them share a moment together as the sun rises and they stare down at the baby, recreating and replacing the scene from the opening credits that had Harry's wife in Sybil's place. Aww, looks like they end up together after all. And with that, the credits roll. So what'd I think of my first visit to Silent Hill? I have to say, I totally get why so many people love this series. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I was familiar with the stories for most of the games in the franchise, but in terms of gameplay and its world, I was mostly in the dark about it. I was coming into it pretty much expecting a Resident Evil clone, but the two games couldn't be more different from each other. For one, while Silent Hill makes use of tank controls, it doesn't have fixed camera angles, so entering from one room to the other isn't as jarring like in the older Resident Evil games. There was no inventory management at all, so I was carrying dozens of things by the end of the game. Same goes for the ammo, which is more abundant here than the Resident Evil games, as I had at least 100 bullets for the pistol by the end. Granted, this was more because I wasn't required to shoot at everything, and outside the flying enemies, just about every monster could be bludgeoned to death. I didn't comment on it at all, but even the voice acting was better than I expected. Sure, it's got nothing on today's voice acting, but the dialogue didn't come off as stiff and awkward sounding like a lot of PS1 games. Some felt a bit off, mainly Lisa, who'd go from sounding scared to monotone and quiet while explaining something to Harry. Harry himself, whose reaction to all the crazy shit around him comes off like a bored dad reading the paper. But others like Dahlia sounded great, really pulling off the crazy old lady voice, and doing a decent maniacal laugh. I'm also a fan of the puzzles. Like I brought up earlier, it was refreshing to actually put my brain to use to try and solve them, as opposed to just turning a crank or matching colors or something, even if I was still too stupid to figure it out and needed a guide. The atmosphere and world is surprisingly intimidating. I know the fog exists because of the technical limitations of the PS1 and as a way to hide the draw distance, but it does a great job of creating this uneasiness as I explore the town. Never quite sure what I might run into as I explore. Helped along when the Otherworld starts taking over and things get dark. The music and sound effects adding to that tension. If I played this as a kid, I definitely would have been scared shitless trying to go through this town. I'd say my only real gripes are the monsters, combat, and difficulty, Before the reveal that the monsters were conjured up by Alessa, I felt their designs were a bit generic and nothing too special. Like they could be a part of any horror game. Combat never really had me thinking about how to approach enemies, since most were very slow and didn't do tons of damage. I could easily bludgeon most of them to death without taking damage. And the ones like flying enemies where I'd have to use ammo, most of the time I'd just run away and save myself the headache. Same goes for the bosses, where I'd just run away and take shots. Only Sybil and the final boss gave me any issues. And that bastard was annoying if only because I could never figure out how the hell to dodge that lightning attack. I think you can strafe around it, but I only figured that out after I beat the game. Instead, I just healed through his attacks with all the health items I had, which was its own problem as there were so many health items lying around. This is probably one of those instances where I really should have played on hard mode instead. I have no clue how the rest of the series compares in difficulty, but I may just go with hard mode for the next game I play just in case. It was great to finally experience Silent Hill for myself, and I definitely feel like I missed out by not playing it until now. I have no context for how the first game holds up in comparison to the rest of the series, but it's certainly off to a great start. And with how the fandom loves and holds up Silent Hill 2 as one of the best horror games ever released, I'm excited to continue playing the series. Though I'll probably play through the rest of the main series before I decide to review the next one. Depending on when this video debuts, it's either on the day of or a few days after Konami's big announcement. So hopefully we get some news reviving the series and not something soul-crushing like NFTs or Funko Pops. No outro this time around. Instead, I'll end the video with these bloopers from the ending credits. I'm Creepy Slippers, and I'll see you later. Peace.